In my hand, I hold just some of the messages notorious killer Chris Watts said to women who have written to him in prison since he pleaded guilty to murdering his pregnant wife and 2 little girls. Some are true crime buffs, convinced they've uncovered a conspiracy. Others are concerned moms, trying to understand what caused a seemingly loving dad to commit unthinkable evil. And some are prison groupies, looking for love with the infamous inmate. Today, in an Oz Show exclusive, I'm sitting down with one of the women who's been accused of pursuing a romantic relationship with Chris Watts. Was she really part of a prison love triangle? And what did she learn about this truly disturbing father? It was a story that shocked the world. Chris and Shanann Watts appeared to be a picture-perfect couple with 2 young girls and happily anticipating the birth of their 3rd child.
So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know.
That's awesome.
But in August of 2018, Watts' family vanished after Shanann returned from a weekend business trip, and he made a desperate public plea for their safe return. But just hours later, Watts confessed to his father that he killed his pregnant wife after accusing her of strangling their daughters.
I freaked out. Not just this. It's rage.
His story soon unraveled, and Watts was arrested and charged with killing his 34-year-old wife, 4-year-old Bella, 3-year-old Celeste, and his unborn child. Their bodies were found at an oil site where he worked, Shanann in a shallow grave, and his little girls stuffed inside oil tanks. All reportedly so he could start a new life with his mistress of just a few months. Ultimately, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to felony charges relating to the horrific murders and received 5 life sentences without parole. But within days of admitting to killing his family, he reportedly began receiving love letters in prison. And he's been corresponding with multiple women ever since. I'm joined now by Krista, who began communicating with Chris Watts a year and a half ago. So, Krista, what made you want to write a letter to a convicted murderer?
When I saw the case presented online and on the media, initially I assumed he was a monster and he did this. And then as I looked into the case more, from watching the videos and how he interacted with his wife and children, there just was something there, and I just had this feeling that he did not commit this crime, and that's one of the main reasons I decided to write to him.
Chris, I'm sort of still lost. You're corresponding with someone who's in prison. Do you have any relationships to prisons?
I do. I grew up after 9 years old for a couple of years. My father was in federal prison in Allen, Pennsylvania. So every weekend was trips down to Pennsylvania from Connecticut. Phone calls, collect calls. We'd have to be home at a certain time. Letters. We'd have to write letters back to my dad. So my life consisted of that very young, going to prisons. And then I decided to work in them after seeing the treatment my father received. Not saying my dad is innocent because he admitted to his crimes. I just had a different perspective, and I wanted to help people.
So he didn't respond to you directly, at least at first. He gave your letter to another inmate there, a gentleman named Dylan Talman. Yep. And you eventually got engaged to Dylan.
I did.
How did your letters lead to that?
Well, when I wrote to Chris, he gave the letter to Dylan and the picture that I sent. And then Dylan wrote back explaining that Chris was involved with somebody and he gets a lot of letters every day. And he started writing to me. And then I continued writing with Dylan, and I didn't reach out to Chris again.
So you eventually broke off your engagement.
Yes.
Just to get everyone on the same
yes.
page. Partially, I'm hearing because Dylan thought you were more interested in Chris than him.
Yes, and that's not true. There was no love triangle at all. I had no interest in Chris in that way, not romantically at all.
So I'm going to show the audience a photo that you did send to Chris.
Absolutely.
And this is in the first letter, and people, when they see this photo, are going to think it's proof that you were trying to romantically pursue him.
Yeah, no.
You were not trying to date Chris Watts?
I was not. Absolutely not.
And why include the picture of yourself?
I wanted him to know who he was speaking to. The letter I sent was very informal. I didn't talk anything clinical to him for my profession. I just wanted to talk to him as a friend and tell him that there are people that don't feel that he either completely did this or did it at all.
So Chris Watts was recently called the most hated man in his prison.
Yes.
I mean, there are probably a fair number of people in prisons that aren't liked. It's a harsh moniker.
Yes.
And you said that you eventually did get to talk to him. So I want to understand more about what's going on in his mind. He spoke a dozen times.
Yes.
You obviously have some insights here. So you've argued that he's funny on the phone. I don't think any of us have really seen that side of him.
He is. He was what you see in the videos is how he presents himself. He's very funny, he's kind, he has a dry sense of humor, and he appears to be very genuine.
Did he ever flirt with you?
Not at all. No, very respectful at all times.
Do you find him attractive?
I mean, I think he's a handsome gentleman. I think they're a beautiful family, so, but not in a romantic way.
There are times in your discussions where you say he has cried.
Yes.
What happened?
When he spoke to me about the family, his wife and his children, he said that he was crying on the phone, and I asked him what was he upset about. It was the first time he ever really showed anything besides humor and laughter, and he said that it bothered him when they showed him the pictures of his family after they passed, and that's when he cried on the phone and kind of broke down and showed remorse.
These are pictures of them after they'd been pulled out of the barrels. It's horrible.
It is.
All right, coming up, for Chris Watts and fellow inmate Dylan, more than just friends. Krista reveals what she knows. Last year, news broke that convicted killer Chris Watts and another inmate named Dylan had been disciplined after Chris's Vaseline and a pair of his underwear were found in Dylan's cell. The news led some to speculate that they were romantically involved with each other. My guest, Krista, was engaged to Dylan at the time. So, Krista, what's your understanding of what really happened?
When Dylan was in Dodge Correctional, he was on appeal hold, which didn't allow him to have money on his books or his account. Therefore, Chris was next door to him, and Chris would often buy him stuff and give him things. And it's something pretty common that they do in prisons. I've worked in prisons in Connecticut, and that's something inmates do. They help each other out if somebody doesn't have food or clothing. And it's just something that Chris did. There was no relationship.
So there's a bag of stuff he gave it happened to have.
Yes, it had new underwear in it with Chris's name in it. They have to label everything. Vaseline, Dylan would use Vaseline on his lips, hygiene products, coffee, granola bars. There was much more besides just the Vaseline and underwear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Especially, you shared some letters
Yes.
that appear to be between Chris and Dylan. And in these letters, there are messages that Chris is sending to you.
Yes.
And in one of them, I'm going to quote it, Chris writes, "I could see Krista calling up here, giving the staff a piece of her mind and letting them have it in true Northeastern over-the-top style. My wife and her family were from New Jersey, and you don't piss anyone off from the North. Ha ha," he writes. So it's a little bizarre that Chris compared you to his murdered wife, the wife that he murdered. How did that make you feel?
I mean, when I think of Shanann, I just see a beautiful individual, and if I could be an ounce of what she is, that's a compliment to me.
So Chris's wife, Shanann, had lupus, which is something that you've also told me that you have.
Yes.
And this next letter refers to that. He writes, "She has to keep her anxiety down," meaning you. "Brother, this is triggering the flares that she's having. She can handle this. I know she can." So again, he's giving you advice that I'm certain, gave Shanann,
Absolutely.
a woman he has admitted to murdering, at least legally.
Yes.
So you have a master's degree in psychology. You say you've worked in prisons in the past. Let me ask you a tough question. Do you think Chris Watts was corresponding with you so he could manipulate you, so he could get things from you?
Yeah. I don't think he's completely not manipulative. I don't feel he manipulates me. I haven't felt that way. But do I think he manipulates others? It's possible. Yes. Yes.
He does manipulate people.
I believe so. Yes.
He says in one of his letters that his mom, Cindy, will call you. Again, it's a fairly intimate thing to introduce someone to their mother. So why would Chris Watts do that to you if he doesn't have interest in you?
When the incident happened with the boxers and the Vaseline in Dylan's cell, Dylan was placed into seg for about a month.
What's that mean?
Segregation, when they put him, they quote, in the hole, they put him in segregation.
And is that because they thought that there was something going on between them sexually?
Yes, and they also felt the contraband. They called it contraband. It's not supposed to be in each other's cells. So I didn't talk to Dylan for about 2 weeks. Chris was given 2 weeks in segregation. He came out, and then he contacted Cindy, his mother, to tell her to call me, to inform me that Dylan was in segregation. And then that's when she contacted me. And then she and I had a very close relationship from then on.
Does Cindy think her son murdered Shanann?
No, she doesn't.
But he confessed it on tape to her husband.
Yes, yes. My opinion, and from the conversations I've had, I do feel, and I want to say my opinion, I do feel the mistress that he had and her family and possible friends were involved in that.
So I want to ask about another person mentioned in Chris's letters. He writes, "Pray for me because my calls with Anna have been very lustful lately."
Yes.
So explain to everybody who Anna is and what is Chris's relationship with her.
Okay, when I wrote to Chris, he was dating Anna. She was somebody that he was dating. I'm not sure if they're still dating, but they were dating, and she and I became friends, and we talked a couple of times a day. And he was concerned because he turned to religion and feels very religious. He felt that he was committing a sin by having those kind of conversations with her.
I'm going to ask you one more time because
Sure.
when I first heard the case, like everybody else in America, shocked.
Absolutely.
Couldn't believe it could possibly happen. Then I watched, and I have done this several times, the video of him telling his father that he broke and killed her. So why do you think he's innocent?
From what I feel and from what I was told, he already said that he already lost his wife and children. He wasn't going to lose his parents and sister and niece and nephew. So he decided just to confess to that, to keep everyone alive.
This is dark.
It is. It's sad. It's unimaginable.
Do you have any regrets about your relationship with Chris Watts?
I don't. I feel what I did was okay. I know there's a lot of people that don't like me and they probably think I'm crazy for my opinion and what I feel, but I stick by it, and I just want all the families involved and loved ones to find peace.
Well, thank you for sharing your story on the show.
Thank you, Dr. Oz. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Chris's mistress, Nicole Kessinger, willingly provided evidence to investigators after these murders and is reportedly now living in witness protection. According to authorities, Chris Watts acted alone when he committed these unthinkable murders. Coming up, we have more shocking revelations from Chris Watts' prison letters. We'll be right back. We're back with more revelations from the prison letters of Chris Watts. In one letter, Chris writes of evidence that is known and has never been examined, and claims there was an abuse of power and coercion and procedural issues that were committed by law enforcement. No one has covered this case more closely than Crime Stories with Nancy Grace host, Nancy Grace. She's also the author of Don't Be a Victim, a beautifully done book, and she joins us now. So Nancy, let's talk a little bit about Chris Watts. He has filed an appeal. Actually, he hasn't filed an appeal that I know of. Has he done anything else or offered any evidence that he is falsely accused, because he confessed to these crimes?
Oh, Dr. Oz, how I would love to get him up on the stand on cross-examination when he says procedural errors, coerced behavior, injustice. What injustice? What procedural error? It's easy to throw out legal terms he's learned in the jailhouse library, but there's nothing to support it. Let me remind everybody, he took a guilty plea. This is another lie by Chris Watts to manipulate women. And I got a lot to say about that too, Oz.
Well, let's get to that. What is it about Chris Watts that attracts this type of attention?
Number one, some people think he's physically attractive. Not me. I think he's a killer. He looks like the devil to me because I know what he did. But you got to look at these women. No offense to Krista or all the other women writing Chris Watts. Some of them are insecure. To some women, he's a martyr and wrongfully convicted. To others, he tells them the gory details because they want to hear it. Then you have your run-of-the-mill fame seekers. They're all misled.
Actually, we brought this up, but I want to touch on it again. I've interviewed another woman who wrote to Chris Watts. Her name is Sherilyn Cadle, and she's a grandmother. And she wrote because she wanted to understand why he would do these heinous things. And in one letter to her, he wrote in detail about killing his family. To your point, you can see the handwriting, by the way, appears the same in the letter to her and the letters that Krista gave us. I'm going to pull out just one word. Just look at the word family, right? Does it look pretty similar, like the same person wrote?
Oh, my goodness. This is the same handwriting.
Right. So in one letter, he's saying, I did something horrible. And the other one, he says, I'm innocent. So what you're pointing out, I think, comes to bear.
My point is, he is conning these women. And this is the deal. When you don't know a horse, Oz, look at the track record. He has manipulated Shanann. I'm giving myself chill bumps right now. Shanann loved him so much. And according to evidence, she was praying to God when he strangled her after he had sex with her, by the way. He had sex with her, then he killed her. Oh. Then he killed his two little girls. One of them saying, Daddy, no. I'm working up to a point, Oz. Just go with me. Then they are taken out to Anadarko, where he worked. They were crammed, forced down into oil containers, forced. The opening was 8 inches. It tore the skin off of those little girls, ages 3 and 4, shoulders. And as they marinated in that oil, they were de-sleeved. That's a nice way of saying their skin came off. He sent his wife to a shallow grave where she had coffin birth, Oz. She expelled baby Nico. Yes, she gave birth, coffin birth, into her underwear in the dirt. That is what he did. Why is that significant? Why do I bring up those details? I don't enjoy them. I'm not some ghoul. I bring them up because his confessions fit perfectly with the forensic evidence. Why does he know the details? Because he committed the crimes. And by God in heaven, I will not stand by and let somebody blame Shanann Watts or any other innocent person for what he did.
That's I'd never heard some of those details. Nancy, they are gruesome. Actually,
And that's the tip of the iceberg, Oz. The tip of the iceberg.
let me bring in forensic psychologist and author of Evil Thoughts, Wicked Deeds, because that's what we're talking about, Dr. Chris Behandi. Chris, what does getting all these love letters and other communications do to the head of a prisoner like Chris Watts?
Feeds his ego, keeps his game going. He can still have his hustle. You know, when he was out there, he had his had his wife, he had his mistress. He's leading a double life, and he's able to get all of that admiration, that adulation to gratify his needs. He's still doing it from prison with these, I would call them victims. He's still got victims out there that he's manipulating. He's an opportunist. This is what he does.
Nancy, I appreciate your passion, and Chris, all the great wisdom. A brand new version, by the way, of Nancy's book, Don't Be a Victim, is available today. Be sure to get a copy. It is superbly well done.